As you suggested, extend your lower back in high bar, sacrificing a bit of brace is fine, but Squat University and other channels swear against it any words. Yep, I will say the same thing again. I'm adding about this. If you're high bar back squatting, you need to have the lumbar extension, and chest up is an incredibly valuable cue. Typically, the people I see talking about this are people who are predominantly looking at low bar squatting or kind of squatting a little bit where they style of squatting is where they push the knees out and they go to just below parallel, which is fine. And you can use the brace at that position and you don't have to worry about the barbell staying over that kind of midfoot region. So you have a very small window where the barbell can move forward and backwards in the high bar squat if you're squatting to full depth, where the barbell can stay within and you can make a successful lift. If the barbell goes too far outside of this window, what will happen is you'll either tip too far forward or lose your balance backwards. Nobody loses their balance backwards. It's almost always tipping you far forward. Now, if I look for a big brace, it usually comes with rib down. This usually comes with a bit more upper back flexion. So if I'm really thinking about that, then I'm going to be predisposing the barbell to moving far forward. And this is going to predispose you to obviously good morning the squat and pushing the barbell out of where you can use your legs efficiently, forcing your back to take over. Go look at any single weightlifter starting a squat. None of them do this. Breathe down. Everybody's breathing up into the barbell. And what you'll often see as they're coming up above parallel, people will breathe up further. They'll lift their chin up to force more extension into their back. So if you're high bar back squatting, you need lumbar extension, you need chest up. I'm adamant about it. I've tested it pretty far myself. I guess you could say 300 kilos is a decently far high bar back squat to take this with someone who's high bar squatted 317.5 kilos. Look at any elite weightlifter high bar back squatting. None of them are sacrificing a ribs down position, doing a massive brace for their squat. None of them are doing that. Look at some of the great squatters, Tian Tao, Kate Amar. Look at Sisman Koecki, Polish lifter, built terribly for squatting. Look at any of them. None of them are ribs down and bracing. Everybody is looking for extension in the lower back. Everyone's looking for a chest up. Now, to the degrees of which you extend is dependent, but if you're high bar back squatting, if you want, actually, what I should specifically say is you want to squat as deep as possible. You're trying to keep a consistent back angle. Now, I think what's happened here is that some people find this hard, and instead of being like, right, this is pretty tough for me to do, I'm just going to change how I go about squatting because this is really hard to maintain. That's not the correct way of going about these things. That's not the correct way of trying to improve technique or search for the best technique, because something is hard to do. And just because it's hard for you to get to that position doesn't mean other positions are better positions. It just means it's harder to get that better position. If it was easy, everybody would doing it. So the extension and chest up in a deep squat, if you want to squat as deep as possible, chest up, lumbar extension is very, very important. Low bar, slightly different. Sometimes chest up is good. Sometimes that brace is more important. It's a little bit different depending on the build. But again, if we're squatting deep, I will argue with anybody about this. And I'll argue while I'm doing the squat to prove it to you. It is really important. Look at anybody squatting. Go on to weightlifting house, go to all things gym, go on to hook grip. Look at anybody starting the squats. Every weightlifter starts like this. None of them are squatting in like this. Absolutely none of them. Maybe the super heavyweights will be harder to see because there's a bit more mass encompassing the torso, but it's a little bit harder. But if you look at everyone else, nobody's breathing down into their brace with a deep squat. It's just not useful. And there's not a person on the earth who could convince me otherwise. It's just not the way forward for deeper squats.
Can I just mention one thing on this as well? So Zat, with your comment, but also with the last 10 people who've asked this question, everybody has talked about extending your lower back. Let's say extending your lumbar has come up a lot as well, right? The lumbar spine, when you look at a skeleton, is in extension. There is something called a natural lumbar curve. That is not this, right? That is not, if you put a 4x2 on someone's back when they're standing there normally or moving through normal human movement, the lower back has a level of extension to it called the lumbar curve, right? When Owen is talking about this position where he's breathing into the bar, that is extension of the thoracic spine and the upper back, right? It's what the upper back is doing as they're breathing into it. There's a real disconnect here. And I think the disconnect is coming because some of the people trying to make the claims online are purposely talking about the lumbar and purposely talking about the lower back in a way that's quite misleading, because you do see people in this kind of banana-shaped, really weird position, which isn't what people are talking about. But it's never, the lumbar should never be in a fully flat position, no matter what you're doing. As much as you want to talk about powerlifters getting into local flexion with the upper back as they're deadlifting or something along these lines where we're biasing a position, the lumbar is always in extension. no matter what the movement is, if we want to be stacking our spine on top of itself in a good position that is safe and as effective as possible, the lumbar is always in extension.
I think I know where this came culturally as well, is that we went through that phase where everyone was like, okay, any amount of flexion is bad under load. And then there was some research saying that, okay, you can't stop your lower back entering some amount of flexion during the weighted movements. People took this from the deadlift then and the squat and said, okay, any amount of extension that you try and aim for is bad because you're going to lose it anyway, which is completely asinine. I think it's a ridiculous argument. And even when you look at extending your hips, more extension in your lower back or that lumbar spine makes it easier to extend your hips. And that's the point of the squat at a certain point, is extending those hips when you're standing up. So yeah, it is definitely something maybe people are talking about different things, but I think definitely happens in some cases. When I see people talking about it, they're specifically talking about this kind of hips back squat, squatting just below parallel, which isn't certainly not what we're talking about. It's not how anyone we coach squats or anyone who comes to us really squats realistically. And even in the low bar squat, rest up is a very valuable cue for certain people.
There's also this really disingenuous thing where people say, oh, I'm sacrificing my brace, or I don't get a good brace, or my midline isn't going to be as strong. Like if my bicep is tense like this, right, when I'm in a fully flexed position and this is tensed, this is also tensed here, and this is also tensed here. This idea, obviously there's a length tension relationship with all muscles we have, and the abs and the midline are no different. But just because I'm like this versus like this doesn't mean my abs and my midline and my obliques and all of that musculature around the center of my torso is suddenly not working. Just in a slightly longer position. They're muscles that are able to extend far beyond that range. So it's not like they have no strength in those positions. It just doesn't feel as braced because you're not stacking your ribs down on top of your belly.